Gwen is 63. She has $600,000 saved, and she called me last month genuinely unsure whether she could ever afford to stop working. She'd spent years being told she needed $1 million, or $1.5 million, and $600,000 felt like she'd shown up to the finish line missing half her legs. So I asked her a different question than the one she'd been asking herself. Not how much do you have? Instead, how much does that money pay you every month? Because that's the question that actually decides whether you can retire, and almost nobody frames it that way. When we did the math, her $600,000 turned out to generate about $2,000 a month for the rest of her life, without ever touching the original pile. Add in her Social Security, and she was looking at more than $4,000 a month, coming in every month, whether she worked or not. Gwen didn't have a money problem. She had a translation problem. She'd been staring at the size of her savings when the number that mattered was the paycheck it produces. Today, I'm going to translate 3 specific numbers for you: $300,000, $600,000, and $900,000, into the actual monthly income each one pays. And then, I'm going to show you the 4 things that change that number in real life. Because the simple version is where most people get misled. I'm Mike, a regular guy who reached financial freedom on an ordinary income. This channel is where I explain the money stuff nobody ever sat us down and explained, the way I'd explain it to a friend across the kitchen table. If that's your thing, hit subscribe. Let me start with the tool that turns a pile of money into a monthly paycheck. Because you need this one idea, and the rest is just arithmetic. There's a well-known guideline in retirement planning called the 4% rule. It comes from a study in the 1990s that asked a simple question: how much can you pull out of a retirement portfolio each year and raise a little for inflation without running out of money over a 30-year retirement? The answer that study landed on was about 4% of your starting balance in the first year. The idea is that a sensibly invested portfolio grows enough, on average, to keep refilling what you take out. So, 4% a year is a pace that history says it can sustain for decades. 4% a year is the same as dividing by 25, and it gives you a clean way to translate any pile into a paycheck. So, let's translate. $300,000 at 4% pays you about $12,000 a year, which is $1,000 a month. That $1,000 a month arrives on top of whatever else you have. And in principle, it keeps coming for the rest of your life, while the original $300,000 stays largely intact, working, refilling itself. $600,000 pays you about $24,000 a year, which is $2,000 a month. That was Gwen's number, and you can see why the reframe changed her whole outlook. $2,000 a month is a real, ongoing paycheck she'd been treating as if it were nothing. $900,000 pays you about $36,000 a year, which is $3,000 a month. Notice the clean pattern here. Every $300,000 you save is worth roughly another $1,000 a month of income for life. That's a useful thing to carry in your head. Each $300,000 is a $1,000 a month paycheck you give yourself, forever. The number on your statement is not the number that pays you. Now, if I stopped there, I'd be doing the same thing every hyped-up retirement video does, which is hand you a clean number and let you walk away believing it. The real figure is different in both directions, and the difference is the whole reason this channel exists. There are 4 things that change what these piles actually pay you, and you need all 4 to see your real picture. The first, and the biggest by far, is Social Security, and it works in your favor. Almost every scary retirement number you've ever seen quietly ignores it, which is how the industry makes you feel poorer than you are. Your portfolio is not the only paycheck you'll have in retirement. The average retired worker collects about $2,700 a month from Social Security in 2026, and for many people, it's more. So let's redo those 3 numbers, the honest way, by stacking Social Security on top. With $300,000 paying you $1,000 a month, plus that average $2,720 from Social Security, you're actually looking at about $3,071 a month. With $600,000, it's about $4,797, which was Gwen's real situation. And with $900,000, you're at roughly $5,777. For a household where both people have their own Social Security, You add a second check on top of that. The pile you saved was never meant to carry your whole retirement by itself. It sits on top of a foundation the government already built with 30 years of your payroll taxes. The second thing that changes the number, works against you, and it's taxes. A dollar is not a dollar depending on which account it lives in, and this trips up almost everyone. If your money is in a traditional 401k or a traditional IRA, you never paid tax on it going in. So every dollar you pull out in retirement is taxable income. That $2,000 a month from a traditional account isn't really $2,000 in your pocket. Depending on your tax situation, it might be more like it's $1,700 after taxes. But if that same money is in a Roth account, where you already paid the tax years ago, the entire $2,000 is yours, free and clear, nothing owed. Same balance, same withdrawal. And a few $100s a month difference in what actually reaches your checking account, decided entirely by which bucket you filled during your working years. This is why I've said in other videos that having some money in a Roth is worth so much in retirement. It's not just about the tax you save, it's that Roth income doesn't count the way traditional withdrawals do, which can also keep more of your Social Security from being taxed and keep you under the thresholds that raise your Medicare premiums. When you're planning, run your real numbers as after-tax dollars, because that traditional balance has a silent partner who gets paid before you do. The third thing is inflation, and it's the quiet one, because it doesn't take anything from you this year. It takes it slowly over decades. The 4% rule already accounts for this in one direction, because it's designed so you can give yourself a small raise each year to keep pace with rising prices. That's the good news, and it's real. But you still have to understand what inflation does to the paycheck over a long retirement. That $2,000 a month feels like a solid income today. 20 years into retirement, with prices rising around 3% a year, you'd need roughly $3,600 a month just to buy what $2,000 buys now. The 4% rule is built to let your withdrawal grow toward that, but only if you left your money invested in something that actually grows. This is the mistake I see people make out of fear. They retire and move everything into cash and bonds because it feels safe. And in doing so, they lock in a paycheck that shrinks a little every year for the rest of their life. Some growth in the portfolio isn't a luxury in retirement. It's the thing that keeps your paycheck from melting. The fourth thing is the one almost no simple video mentions, and it's about timing, specifically the timing of bad years. It's called sequence of returns risk, and it matters most right around the day you retire. Here's the idea in plain terms. Two people can retire with the exact same $600,000, take out the same amount each year, and earn the same average return over their whole retirement, and one of them runs out of money while the other dies rich. The only difference is when the bad years happened. If the market drops hard in your first few years of retirement, you're selling investments to live on while they're down, which does permanent damage that a later recovery can't fully undo. Let me put real numbers on it. A $600,000 portfolio, pulling out $24,000 a year, that happens to hit a couple of steep down years right at the start, can end up worth less than half of what the same portfolio would be worth if those same bad years had struck a decade later. Same money and same withdrawals, earning the same average return over the full retirement, and yet a wildly different outcome, decided by the order the years arrived in. You can't control when a downturn hits. What you can control is having a buffer for those first few years, so you're not forced to sell into a crash. A common approach is to keep 1 to 2 years of spending in cash as you enter retirement, so that when the market drops early, you spend from the cash and give your investments time to recover instead of selling them at the bottom. The years right around your retirement date are the most fragile in your entire financial life, and a little cash cushion is what protects them. So let me put the whole real picture together using Gwen, because the honest version is more useful than the fantasy version in either direction. Gwen has $600,000. The simple math says that pays her $2,000 a month. Stacking her Social Security on top brings her to about 4,770 larmans a month. A chunk of her savings is in a traditional account, so some of that portfolio income is taxable, which trims it down somewhat. Inflation means she needs to keep part of her money invested and growing so that $4,000 still feels like $4,000 in 15 years. And because she's retiring right now, she's keeping about a year and a half of expenses in cash. So an early market drop can't force her to sell at the worst possible time. That is her actual retirement, not the terrifying "you need $1.5 million" headline, and not the naive just multiply by 4% clean number either. The real one with all 4 layers accounted for. And it works. The number on your statement is not the number that pays you. Here's your one job after this video. Take your own current retirement balance, whatever it is, and divide it by 25. That's your rough annual paycheck from your portfolio. Divide that by 12 for the monthly version. Then go to the Social Security website where you can see your own estimated benefit and add that on top. In about 10 minutes, you'll have a real number, your actual projected monthly income in retirement, which is a number most people never calculate and spend years being afraid of instead. You might find, like Gwen did, that you're much closer than the headlines led you to believe. And if you find you're short, you'll finally know by exactly how much, which is the first honest step toward closing it. And you can run the whole thing backwards too, which is useful if retirement is still years away. Start from the paycheck you want instead of the pile you have. If you want your investments to pay you $1,000 a month, you need about $300,000. For $2,000 a month, about $600,000. For $3,000, about $900,000. Then subtract the Social Security you already expect, and the gap that's left is the only part you actually have to build yourself. A lot of people discover their real target is far smaller than the $1 million number they'd been quietly dreading, because they forgot to subtract the paycheck the government is already going to send them. The number on your statement is not the number that pays you, so stop staring at the pile and start counting the paycheck. If this was useful, hit subscribe. This is what I do every week. Plain English, nothing to sell you. Next video. I'm going deeper on that 4% rule I built this whole video on, because it's more than 30 years old now. The man who created it has since revised his own number. And the honest answer for someone retiring today is not the 4% everyone still quotes. I'll show you what the current research actually says you can safely spend, and how to find the right number for your own retirement. I'm Mike. I'll see you in the next one.